Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're shifting the paradigm entirely. For the longest time, we've kind of just thought of artificial intelligence as a chatbot, right? Like a super smart assistant we talk to and it types answers back. But we aren't just talking to AI anymore. We're literally handing it the keyboard. We are allowing it to execute these complex, multi-step tasks entirely on our behalf. So we are officially moving from simple prompts to full-blown agentic AI workflows. To really demystify this incredible technology, we're going to break down the anatomy of an agent step by step. We'll cover what AI agents actually are, look at the core building blocks, dive into both less autonomous and highly autonomous patterns, and finally wrap up with evaluations. All right, let's dive straight into part one. What are AI agents and how are we moving beyond that traditional chat box? Okay, so at its core, an agentic AI workflow is basically a process where a large language model doesn't just give you a single static answer, but actually executes multiple steps to get a specific task done. Let's say you ask an AI to write a highly detailed essay on traditional tea ceremonies. Well, instead of just spitting out a draft instantly, an agentic workflow actually pauses. It writes an outline first. Then it realizes, hey, I need more facts. So it goes out and searches the web for history and locations. Then it reads a first draft, reads it over, critiques itself, and finally delivers a polished, revised essay. It's a sequence of thoughtful, functional steps. Now, a lot of people argue online about whether something is a true AI agent or not. But AI pioneer Andrew Ng offers a much more useful perspective here. He argues that agentic AI is a spectrum, not a binary. It's not just a simple yes or no question of, is this an agent? Instead, you should really think about how much freedom and autonomy you're giving the system to complete its assigned task. And that spectrum gives us two main approaches for how these workflows function. On the less autonomous end, we've got workflows where you predefine the exact steps for the AI. You tell it, write an outline, then search the web, then write a draft. You have high human control and highly predictable results. On the flip side, the more autonomous end, you basically just hand the AI a toolbox and say, go write a great essay. The AI actually decides for itself when to search the web, when to rewrite, and when it's totally finished. It's highly creative, but obviously you do surrender a lot of control. Moving on to section 2, let's look at the core building blocks making this happen, models and tools. So to make either end of that spectrum work, you really need the right parts. Think of it as separating the AI's brain from its hands. If the AI model is the brain, well, tools are the hands. Tools are basically the functions you give your AI so it can interact with the outside world, and the scope here is just incredible. You can give your AI web search capabilities, connect it to real-time APIs to send emails or check calendars, grant it information retrieval to securely check your company's private databases, or even allow it to execute code to perform complex math and data analysis. So how do these blocks actually function together in a real-world scenario? Imagine a customer emails you saying they ordered a blue blender, but they received a red toaster. Huge mix-up, right? Well, in step 1, the AI model acts as the brain. It reads the email and extracts the order number and the issue. In step 2, the AI uses a tool to check your order's database, confirming, yep, they indeed bought a blue blender. Finally, in step 3, the AI uses another tool to draft an apology and automatically send an email issuing a replacement. It's this seamless, automated chain of models thinking and tools doing. All right, let's jump into section 3, less autonomous design patterns, specifically reflection and tool use. Now that we have our building blocks, we need blueprints for assembling them. We call these design patterns, and we're going to start with the highly controllable ones. The first pattern is elegantly simple. It's called reflection. Think about a human, right? If you write a really fast email at 2 in the morning and immediately hit send, it might be, well, a little questionable. But if you take a moment to reflect and edit, it's vastly better. AI is exactly the same. In this pattern, step 1 is generating a first draft. Step 2 is explicitly asking the AI to critique its own work to find errors or missing information. And step 3 is generating a newly improved final draft based on that exact critique. It's a surprisingly simple but powerful way to boost output quality. The second pattern we look at is the tool use pattern. Here, you must explicitly define exactly what external functions the AI is actually allowed to touch. If you want it to book meetings, you have to clearly define a calendar tool, tell the AI it has access to it, and explain exactly how to use it. Developers are even using new standards now, like MCP, the Model Context Protocol, to easily plug these standardized tools into their agents. It keeps the AI incredibly grounded and entirely focused on exactly what you permit it to do. Okay, moving to section 4, highly autonomous design patterns, or as I like to call it, unleashing the magic.
Because what if you want to trade that rigid control for high flexibility? First up is the planning pattern. Imagine a customer asks your database, "Hey, do you have any round sunglasses in stock under $100?" There's no predefined path to answer this. So in step 1, the AI receives the query. In step 2, the AI autonomously writes its very own roadmap. It plans out that it needs to first search the database for round, then filter by in stock, then filter by price. Finally, in step 3, it executes its own plan across its tools. And here's a really fun fact. Because the AI generates this plan on the fly, you never quite know the exact steps it'll take until it actually takes them. It's slightly unpredictable for sure, but incredibly flexible.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next pattern, multi-agent systems. Instead of one AI trying to do absolutely everything and just getting totally overwhelmed, you create an entire company of specialized AI departments. You might have a researcher agent hunting down summer marketing trends. It then hands its notes over to a graphic designer agent that creates data visualizations. Finally, a writer agent takes the research and the visuals to compile a final report. When specialized AIs collaborate like this, the results can honestly far exceed what a single agent can do alone.
But okay, all this autonomy raises a pretty glaring question. What happens if your highly autonomous customer service agent just goes rogue? What if it starts ignoring customer problems and instead writes emails praising your biggest competitors, maybe even throwing in a discount code for them? I mean, no way, right? But this jarring scenario is a real possibility if you just let agents run loose without supervision, and it perfectly tees up the absolute necessity of quality control.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the secret weapon, evaluations. Basically, the steering wheel of agentic AI.
To prevent your agent from going completely off the rails, you need this crucial third building block, evaluations, or evals for short. You can measure an agent's success on a pretty simple matrix, objective versus subjective tasks, and tasks with a solid ground truth answer versus those without. Think about it. If you want an agent to extract a date from an invoice, well, that's objective with a ground truth. It either matches the invoice exactly or it doesn't. Simple. But what if you want an AI to make an easy-to-read graph? That is highly subjective, with absolutely no exact ground truth. So you have to grade it on universal standards like color contrast and making sure the text doesn't overlap. So how do you actually run these tests in practice? Well, you've got two main methods. On the one hand, you have code-based evals. This is fantastic for those objective tasks. You literally just write a simple line of code to count errors. For example, if a competitor's name appears in the email, boom, increment the fail counter by 1. On the other hand, for subjective tasks like writing an essay, you use what's called LLM as a judge. This is where you deploy a secondary, completely separate AI model to read the main agent's work and actually grade its nuance, its tone, and its topic coverage based on a rubric that you provide. If you are feeling ready to build your first workflow, keep these super practical tips in mind. First, start quick and dirty. Seriously, don't overthink it. Just get an agent running. Then look for the exact areas where the AI performs worse than a human and build your evaluations based entirely on those early failures. And honestly, here's perhaps the most empowering takeaway from all of this. You do not need to be a software engineer. With today's platforms, you can build incredibly powerful agents and robust evaluations with absolutely no coding experience required. So we have officially moved from the chat box to the driver's seat. You've seen the building blocks, you understand the design patterns from simple reflection all the way to multi-agent teams, and you know exactly how to keep them on track with evaluations. So I leave you with this. Now that you have the blueprints in hand, what complex task is your very first AI agent going to tackle? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope you're leaving inspired to start building.